Australia's journey from a harsh penal colony to one of the world's most prosperous nations is a tale of transformation shaped by its unique history and dynamic population. Australia, a vast and diverse continent, has been inhabited for approximately 65,000 years by the Aboriginal peoples. These early settlers migrated from Southeast Asia at the end of the last ice age and adapted to the continent's varied environments. The Aboriginal population, comprising over 500 tribal groups with distinct languages and cultures, lived in relative isolation until the early 17th century. During the Age of Discovery, Europeans began exploring the world's uncharted territories. Among them were the Dutch, who in 1606, under the command of Willem Janszoon, made the first documented landfall on the Australian coast. The Dutch East India Company, focused on lucrative spice trade routes, briefly explored and mapped parts of Australia, naming it New Holland. However, the Dutch never established colonies, finding the remote and harsh environment uninviting. It wasn't until the 18th century that renewed European interest in Australia emerged, spearheaded by British explorer Captain James Cook. In 1770, Cook's expedition aboard the HMS Endeavour mapped the eastern coastline, landing at Botany Bay. Cook's favourable reports about the land's potential led to Britain's decision to establish a penal colony in the region. In 1788, the First Fleet, carrying convicts and officers, arrived at Botany Bay but quickly moved to a more suitable location at Sydney Cove. This marked the beginning of British settlement in Australia. The early years were marked by struggles, including tensions with the indigenous Aboriginal peoples, who faced devastating impacts from European diseases like smallpox, which decimated their populations. The initial years of British rule were characterised by conflicts and revolts, including the Castle Hill Rebellion in 1804 and the Rum Rebellion of 1808, which saw soldiers briefly take control of the government. Despite these issues, the colony began to stabilise and grow under the leadership of Governor Lachlan Macrae, who implemented significant infrastructure improvements. Throughout the 19th century, British settlers established new colonies across Australia. The colonies of Tasmania, Western Australia, Victoria and South Australia were founded, each with its own distinct characteristics and developmental challenges. Settlers faced conflicts with Aboriginal communities, leading to a series of violent confrontations known as the Frontier Wars. This period of expansion brought further suffering to the Aboriginal peoples, whose lands were increasingly encroached upon by European settlers. During this time, the discovery of gold in the 1850s sparked a massive influx of immigrants and significantly boosted Australia's population and economy. The gold rush not only attracted people from around the world, but also led to social unrest, exemplified by the Eureka Stockade Rebellion in 1854. This revolt against colonial authorities highlighted the growing demand for fair treatment and representation. By the late 19th century, Australia's 6 colonies began pushing for a more unified government structure. Inspired by a rising sense of national identity and dissatisfaction with colonial rule, efforts toward federation gained momentum. In 1901, Australia became a federation with the passing of the Commonwealth of Australia Constitution Act. Sir Edmund Barton was sworn in as the first Prime Minister, marking the beginning of Australia's journey as a unified nation. The early years of the Commonwealth were marked by the implementation of the White Australia policy, designed to restrict non-European immigration. This policy reflected the prevailing attitudes of the time and aimed to maintain a predominantly British demographic. Australia's involvement in World War I was significant, particularly in the Gallipoli campaign, where the Anzacs earned a reputation for bravery. The war had a profound impact on the national consciousness, fostering a sense of identity and resilience. The interwar years were challenging, with economic depression affecting the country, yet this period also saw cultural milestones, such as the establishment of Qantas and notable achievements in sports. World War II further transformed Australia's geopolitical position. The threat from Japan and attacks on Australian soil shifted the nation's foreign policy focus towards the United States, moving away from reliance on Britain. Post-war migration policies saw an influx of immigrants from Europe, who contributed to economic growth and the development of infrastructure. The post-war era ushered in rapid modernisation and growth. The abandonment of the White Australia policy in the 1970s marked a significant shift towards a more inclusive society. During this period, Australia began confronting its colonial past and addressing historical injustices towards Aboriginal peoples. The latter part of the 20th century saw Australia establishing itself as a global player, with cultural landmarks like the Sydney Opera House and the successful hosting of the 2000 Olympic Games showcasing the nation's progress. Economic stability and a high standard of living made Australia a desirable destination for many seeking a better life. Today, Australia stands as a testament to resilience and adaptability. From its early struggles as a penal colony to its emergence as a thriving and diverse nation, Australia's history reflects its capacity to overcome challenges and evolve into one of the world's most prosperous and livable countries.